me a minute, I just need to go and change. And he came back and he changed his jumper and his trousers because he wanted to be in the character of the person in the book he was narrating. He couldn't just sit in the record. This isn't video pictures. This is just sound. It's just an audio. But he still had to change his costume, if you like, to get that illusion that he was that person in the book. Otherwise, he couldn't do it.
Interesting.
And that stuck with me for a long time. I thought, is that if it worked for him, great. But I'm like, well, why couldn't he just sit there like wearing what he wore to get to the meeting and start talking and narrating? And you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's something going on which is illusionary that he's created, that he can do a better job, he feels, if he wears that specific costume for that specific job.
You see, this is interesting because now we're going beyond even the things we're talking about zones here, right? We're talking about zones that we create.
Yeah.
In a way that is almost illusory, right? And now the story that you're just saying, that example is actually going even beyond the zone internally, mentally, emotionally, but now it's also clothing in the external world. You're adding more layers to that zone.
Yeah. And I just found it fascinating that why can't you just do the narration, sat there talking to us like you would, and microphone goes live, start talking. But that's just one example. I think that the people do create these zones, and whether they have to wear clothes to create a zone or whether, I don't know. But I just find it that if you go beyond, we like the word beyond, if you go beyond my comfort zone and then my discomfort zone, and you may have many of them, I don't know, you may have a collection of them and you have varying levels of comfort. Yes. Maybe you have a graph and a chart and you say, well, that's 8 out of 10. I don't know. I mean, there's zone strategy managers that sit there working out all these zones. I don't know. I jest. But, I can imagine if you get so wrapped up in this, and I see some people in social media get really wrapped up in their comfort zones and the discomfort zones and how this happens and that happens. And I prod them and say, how uncomfortable do you get with the concept there are no zones?
So that's a great question.
And then they're really uncomfortable because they're like, well, then there has to be zones. And I go, well, you're a zone strategy manager, managing all these zones, and which one are you in today and which one are you going to go in tomorrow, and how are you going to work out where you're going to go to which zone? But they're all still within a trapped zone void of freedom. Because once you go, well, let's push the zones to one side and ignore the zones, you're then free of zones.
Yeah.
And then you can do whatever you want to do. If I want to go climbing and be scared of heights, I can do that. I don't have to think, oh, is there a zone I need to get into to make me uncomfortable that's going to worry me and increase the fear because I've gone to this comfort zone and then you're pressurized to kind of like, well, I've now got to grow and progress now because I'm in a discomfort zone. And everybody tells you can only grow in a discomfort zone. There's nowhere else to grow.
This is so interesting because...
And it's another layer on top of you have to go here to grow or progress. You can't grow anywhere else. Well, I grow wherever I grow. And I don't sit there thinking, right, today I need to learn something new. I'm going to grow. What's my comfort level? Why do I worry what comfort level is? Just get on and grow. Be free to grow without that baggage of, am I uncomfortable enough? Because then you get into the strategy of, well, the more uncomfortable you are, the more you're going to grow. And how do you measure comfort? And you get so wrapped up in all this zone stuff, you forget the fact, well, you could just get on and grow anyway, with the freedom to just get on and do it. If you can dump the zones and get rid of them that you created in the first place out of nothing. Yeah. Why put that effort into creating zones when you don't need to?
It's almost as if those zones that we create ourselves, which is why we say, you create the illusions to barricade your path and progress. But these zones actually slow us down from really growing. If we're waiting to like do whatever we feel or we're taught that we need to do to get out of one zone and get into another zone, it's like driving a car. Okay, I can't grow in this lane. It's almost like saying, I can't get to my destination if I stay in this left lane. I have to speed up and then go to the right lane and then keep moving forward. It kind
Yeah.
of reminds me of that, like in a way where we're almost like taught that that where we are maybe is stopping us. So it's almost the opposite of what you're saying, which is really super interesting, because we're conditioned by even leadership development always teach you to go out of your comfort zone, right? Or to get into
precisely.
the zone, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the core of where the conditioning, that's kind of the core of the cause that's blocking us to begin with.
It's a bit like you're talking about, and you're in the, you got to get in the next lane on the highway to get further ahead, to get wherever you're getting to. If you're driving down a highway and you're trying to get quicker than the other car, how many cars will you see driving down the highway? If you're in the flow of traffic, everybody else driving down the highway, you'll see the car to the right and the car to the left and one in front.
Right.
Unless it's really busy, maybe one behind. So you'll see, and I mean, I've driven down the road. I did about 10, 20 miles down a motorway today, and you get busy road, you're stuck in the traffic, you're with the same cars going along, and you think, well, it's the same few cars around you, all trying to get to where you're trying to get to. So you're stuck in those lot of cars. If you pull into a lay-by and pull over and sit there calmly, how many cars do you see? A lot of cars.
A lot just going by. Yeah.
So depending on what your objective is, you can actually pull over and stop and reflect, and you can watch a lot of cars and observe. And it's a completely different perspective of the road and the cars. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm enjoying using this analogy as a road, because when I think of zones, I think of lanes, or I think of also a speeding limit in this particular zone.
Yeah.
Right. That all kind of, all of these things come to mind when I think of zones. So we're talking about these illusions that you create to barricade your path and your progress. And we're talking, and so we just discussed zones. Let's tease out a little bit more and tell me what you mean by time. How is it related to time where we're creating these barricades?
Well, it's a bit like that driving down the road. People are racing to beat time to get somewhere, whether it's physically or virtually, or I'm trying to get to the next town in time for lunch, or I'm trying to improve my career by racing to a better job, or climbing that corporate ladder. Why we think climbing is better than swimming in an ocean, I don't know, but that's how the corporate world works. So we're all rushing to try and get somewhere, and we're trying to beat time because we've kind of got a limited amount of it, as we think. But it's a bit like the road thing. What gives you better depth and width to life than slowing down and observing? Why are we racing to the end of what we've got and missing what's going on?
This is so timely what you're saying right now.
Yeah. So, I hope, if I've seen people that are so obsessed with getting to the end of where they're trying to get to as quick as they possibly can, they completely miss where they are. They miss what's around them. I knew someone who was a multimillionaire, and he said, "Oh, yeah, on a Sunday morning, I'm up on the golf course at 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I played 2 rounds of squash, and done all of this, but before it's 7 o'clock in the morning." And he's missed life because he's just rush, and he's crammed his whole day rushing, doing all these things, trying to do more or better or whatever. And you're thinking, but you've missed so many other things around you that he didn't realize he was missing out on.
Yeah.
Because he's so focused on, I'm going there, rather than, well, look there and look there, and there's a whole lot going on over there, But
exactly.
The focus is, I've got to get there as quickly as possible. And actually, like the corporate ladder, it's a one way up. That's it. If you kind of stop in life and, well, let's look left, let's look right, let's, if you kind of swim in an ocean, you can go wherever you want, up, down, left, right, where you want to go. And you may see more joy in life than trying to run up this ladder to get somewhere where you don't know where you're going, but you think it's where you're meant to go, because that's kind of the illusion you've created, or it's been created for you. And so where does time fit into that?
Well, let me tease that out, or let me ask you to tease that out a little bit as it relates to, you mentioned the corporate ladder. And so let's go a little further with that, because a lot of people would say, yeah, but Trevor, Lily, that's my goal. That's my ultimate outcome that I want, which is all the way up there. And I'm doing that without any distractions, any diversions. So one might say, yeah, but Trevor, if I don't keep going up and I go right or left, doesn't that stop me or distract me from my highest goal or potential? Or what would you say to that?
Well, I think it comes back to setting that goal. How did you decide that was the goal you wanted to benefit you, make you more fulfilled, make you happy? Are you chasing success? Why did you choose that goal as the only one thing you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And that's that it's kind of the expenditure of time. If you're going to be that optimal on your time to get to, you want to go from A to Z, and you've worked out you've got to do A to B to B to C to D, E, F, and that's your journey. You planned it out, and that's what you're going to go for. Then you've actually missed the point that if you look behind you, there's Z just back there, and Z might be right behind you. And therefore, if you haven't looked behind you, you won't find Z until you've done all of this journey of this goal that you've created that's really funneled you down to one path. And how do you know that's the one path? Until you get to the end of it, you might have found, actually, I don't want to be where I am. Right. I wish when I got to F, I turned left and tried something else. But it's too late because you're so blinkered spending the time you've got, because you think time is valuable, to get to Z on that one path you've gone. And it's like, sometimes it's like pulling over in a lay-by and pulling over and just stopping, having a rest, letting time pass by and seeing what's going on. And you might actually sit there and think, example, I was looking to buy a vehicle today and I've decided the one I want because that's my goal. I want one of those. That's exactly it. I pull over in a lay-by and I go and think, oh, that's an interest. I haven't seen one of those before. I didn't know you could get them in green. I love green. I wonder what that is. I bet I don't want what I wanted but if I was so racing down the road, I wouldn't have seen the green car to think they exist.
Also, if you weren't present, I mean, look, let's be really clear to all of our listeners and viewers this is very specific to, we're talking to someone who is, for the most part, is really trying to be on their path in a very, like, an ever so conscious way. Right. Like you're saying, if you hadn't been, look, you have meaning, that you put a specific meaning behind this car that you want to buy, and which you will buy, but you're also present. And in that present moment, you can look to the right and see the green one. You can look to the left, like you see different options, or you see different things that are in your vision, right? Because you're present. Yeah.
Well, this is the whole point. And it is the same as, focusing on that one goal. You get so focused on that one goal, you miss opportunities. I mean, the number of people I see on Twitter on a daily basis to tell you that the key to success is consistency.
Yeah.
And I say, well,
that's a trending.
That's the thing. You have to. They don't tell you what you need to be consistently doing, but consistency is the key. Now, I think it was Henry Ford that said, if you keep on doing what you've always done, you always get what you always got. So to me, consistency just sets you in this rut of one journey to one destination, repetitively doing the same thing day after day after day.
It's and you miss out in a wheel, isn't it? It's like you miss out
you miss out spontaneity, creativity, synchronicity. There's so many things that you miss out on, because 20 years ago, you could have called me Mr. Consistent. And my world was very blinkered and everything was black and white. I was very consistently going down this black and white road of everything. That's how it works. That's where I'm going. Step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm going from A and I'm going to end up at Z. I had no clue where Z was, but that's where everybody in the corporate world was pushing you towards. Yeah. You go to A, you get to B, then you get to C, then you get to D, E. That's the steps you went to. And it wasn't until something in life sort of changed and woke up. I said, well, hang on a sec. Let's just look over here. It's like, wow, I hadn't seen that before. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's incredible. Oh, hang on. What's this over here? What's that up there? What's that? Let's forget Z. Let's go and enjoy life. And it opened up this huge horizons to realize that there is more than the journey from A to Z.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. One of the things that I actually have said in many instances, I've said it to clients that I coach, but I've also had this coaching moment for myself when I know that, okay, this is like one of my big dream like ultimate goals. And let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, maybe I'm somewhere at, let's say, a 5 or a 6.
Mm.
And one of the things that I say to myself is okay, Lily, no, who said that it's a sprint? And
Yep.
that kind of is a little reminder, a coaching moment for myself to just know that I'm still on my path toward my ultimate goal. And
Mm.
in all of its clearness, there are, who says that there's this major time that's passing that I'm supposed to be racing, like racing the clock.
Mm.
To your point, we're otherwise we're missing life, right?
Mm. Well, it depends what you want to miss. If you want to miss life and you want to miss all of that,
Yeah.
race ahead to the end as quick as possible and you'll get there.
Yeah. And so,
It's
and
up.
many people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're
I mean,
finding they're empty.
yeah. Well, I've seen that sort of firsthand, those examples, and people that have chased their golden dream of their goal and ended up thinking life ain't great. But they've got
Mm.
there very quickly
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
efficiently. I mean, there's a great quote by Marty Rubin that says a goal ensures progress, but one gets much further without a goal.
Mm. I like that. Who said that?
Marty Rubin.
I love that. So
Yeah.
now, as far as, again, the illusions. So we talked about zones, we talked about time. Tell me about doors.
Doors. I come across one the other day that said, I said, who builds all these doors? And they said, well, maybe some angels or carpenters.
That's very funny, because we all know this saying, everyone that's listening, one door opens, another one closes. And it really gives you the illusion. It seriously does. It gives you this illusion. It's almost like a conditioning since you're a child that doors open and close in life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've always struggled with that saying myself. So I love that you're bringing this up. I typically, of course, I'm an author, and as a writer, I like to think of it as, and again, not one beginning and one ending. When someone says, okay, yeah, just turn the other page, I say, just, like, no, let's just, like, there's no book. It's like a glass of water. Is the glass half full or half empty, or is there no glass? So I like to kind of say that about the doors. It's like, even the word infinite, I just had someone on the other day, and he said, even the word infinite is putting an end point on. And I thought that was really fascinating. This was, I said, wow, I never really thought about that. But even the word infinite, we have to use vocabulary, right? Otherwise, how would we all communicate?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, how.
Yeah. Well, one of my quotes is, doors are for people without no imagination. Or sorry, doors are for people with no imagination. And again, it's like the zones. When do they start coming into your life? When do you first get doors in your life as a metaphorical entity that doesn't exist, but you think it's there? Where do they come from? It's the back to the thoughts thing. Who puts those seeds of thoughts that get into your head to think, I can't do that because there's a door. I've got to open this door. There's a blockage there. I can't open the door to get to do whatever the thing you think you should be doing because there's this door. And where is this door? Has it got a handle? Has it got a letterbox? Who created it? Why can't you open it? Have you tried opening the door? Maybe you could just walk around it. Is there a wall with it as well? That means you can't just go left and circumnavigate that door. Why? But people don't get past those thoughts. They just literally go, I got this door, can't do it, stop.
Well,
and they give
we've
up,
been conditioned with that, haven't we? I
precisely.
mean, we look at paintings that show people up in the sky opening doors, right?
Yeah.
And you read certain things that say, that they always imply there's a door or a doorway, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's because the human condition wants to see something or feel something or understand something as an end of one destination and the beginning of another, perhaps?
I think it's a bit like the zones. We all have this kind of growth, progress kind of motion through life. We all want to do something that we grow or get better, or we somehow progress through life. Otherwise we stagnate. And we kind of have this need to have that benchmark of today I'm here and tomorrow I'm there, and I've got from A to B, so I must have progressed. And if I can measure that through my achievement through battling through discomfort of a zone, or I've managed to open a door, or something's got to actually happen to give a tick to that progress from A to B. Otherwise, how do you know you've got there? And if you haven't progressed, have you been a failure? Oh, I didn't progress. I haven't got better. And I think this progression through life thing, again, we're conditioned into we have to keep moving. I don't want to use the word forward or up, but that's the conditioning we believe. We think we've got to go higher. We have to ascend. Why? Why do we have to go up? Why do we have to go forward? Is going right just as good as going forward? But our illusion is going forward is progress, and that's positive, and that's good. And we're really nice people if we do that. But if you turn right and left, people are, well, I don't know what that means. Am I progressing? I haven't gone forward, but I've gone left. And then they like collapse into, I don't know, I can't benchmark going left. Does that mean I've got better? Have I grown? Who knows? And those concepts don't exist. You have to go forward to get better. Forward is that positive. I mean, go on a positive and negative is a separate one, but it's kind of conditions, and whether it's the ego thing kind of drawing people forward or up. The corporate ladder implies you're going up, and up is getting better. And there's all these dimensional things that we just assume in our lives are so ingrained that climbing is better than falling.
Yeah, it's exactly. Climbing
and the
is
doors
better than
and the doors
falling.
are there, a similar thing in this path, and paths we could add to the list as well. Where do they come from? But to go down the path, if you can open a door and get through it, you've achieved something.
Yeah.
Tick, I'm better. I've achieved something. That's good. I've progressed,
Yeah. It's almost like the first time I remember taking, I speaking with one of my friends that's very, very into a lot of spiritual teachings. And he was talking about portals. And I'm like, oh, now here's another word I have to remember, right? So there's doorways, there's paths, there's right. Portals. And I'm like, portal. And I'm like, is that just another way of saying like a throughway or a pathway or a gateway or a doorway?
Yeah. Similar. It's another similar kind of way of looking at it, I think. So I mean, people, what is one of the other one? People say, oh, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Why are you trying to build a barrier to bring progress? So then you're waiting for someone to knock on it, but that's what people are alluding to think, oh, I haven't got any opportunities. Oh, perhaps if I build a door, someone might knock on it. Why? Who? What? I sometimes wonder what we're all trying to do on this planet. Sometimes we're all building these illusionary things all the time that kind of control us, but we kind of feel we have to have them somehow in our imagination to function.
Why?
I don't know. Because
this is crazy because that saying, by the way, I've never heard that saying.
Yeah.
I think I heard you say, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door.
Yeah.
When we really look at that saying and listen to it, is that not the weirdest, oddest, most barricading comment that is obviously it's supposed to be a positive quote? Is that correct?
Yeah. I was meant to be an inspirational, motivational thing, build more doors and the opportunities will come knocking.
Do you think that that's like almost like the collective, not the collective, the collective like thoughts, just conditioning humans that we're being controlled by something other than ourselves, like by conditioning itself?
Well, I think it's back to where we started the conversation, is it all comes through thoughts. All of this illusionary things come through thoughts. And it's the big question of do we have our own? Because people say, oh, I've had a thought. Well, was it your thought? And how do you know it's your thought? Where did you get it from? How do you own a thought? Nobody really knows, but they call it my thought rather than a thought,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a case of where do the thoughts come from? Can they be plumbed into you from other places, from wherever, to make you think certain things? And it's a whole other way of working about, do you think your thoughts, or do thoughts make you think? If thoughts make you think, and thoughts are sent to you to make you think you've got to build a door, then you think you've got to build a door. And I think it comes really to I'm not sure how you teach it, and I'm not sure how we know it, but I think it's the way our minds can work. And I use the word mind, not brain, as a separate entity. I think a lot of people probably just have a mind that people say, oh, I'm open-minded. To me, if you're open-minded, you're going to be flooded with thoughts. Yeah. Because if your mind is open to any thought that's going to arrive any minute of the day from anywhere to saying anything, you're going to have this tidal wave of thoughts. I'd rather be focus-minded and choose what I want to think about.
Exactly.
Choose the thoughts I want to capture. And if someone says to me, oh, you haven't got any opportunities, you know, go and build some doors, I don't want those thoughts.
Yes. And for those viewers and listeners, 2 years ago, Trevor, we had an amazing conversation. Trevor talked about, I believe that was brainfulness versus mindfulness.
That's it.
So, for everyone that's listening and viewing, head over to that episode. I believe it was the first or second of the episodes of Beyond the Current Situation. This way you will understand what Trevor is talking about, and the difference. He beautifully translates to us in layman's terms the difference between the brain and the mind. So, and you also talked about, you also said, your thoughts don't come from your head. If you did, I mean, all the thoughts from birth or inception, even, until now, like that would be impossible. Like, where would that fit in the brain? Right.
I see. Yeah.
So as it relates to then these illusions, that one creates to barricade their path, because we have to use vocabulary somehow, and their progress. You're relating this, you're kind of talking about this as it relates to also the things that we allude to as time, and we have to do this at this time and that time. And just to be clear, Trevor is not saying that, if you have a schedule, don't stick to it. If that would be silly. I mean, obviously we have to stick to schedules and and clock time. Otherwise, Trevor and I wouldn't be here on a scheduled time, right?
At the same time. Yeah.
So let's be clear. That's not really what he's saying. He's talking about in the large scheme of things. Also, or even the smaller scheme of things. We're not talking about just day-to-day, moment-to-moment clock time when you have to wake up and get the kids off to school. You have to wake up and then you have to go to work after that. You have to, give yourself a few minutes to shave before you go work, that kind of thing. Doors, as it relates to doors, where that's another barricade, another thing that's blocking us. Well, who says there's a door?
Well, I think the point is that, the time thing, how much time do people spend strategizing about doors? Oh, I only wish I could go and do X, but I can't because this is barrier, so I can't. And they then make the excuse of I can't go. And I forget what I was talking to somebody the other day. So I can't do that because I'm busy on a Tuesday. Some workshop they wanted to do was only on Tuesdays. Well, I can't do that because I can't do that. I could do it if it's on a Thursday, but I can't do that. And the mental activity going on, debating all of these possibilities of doors that may be open or closed to them trying to do something, that takes them lots of time.
And then on top of that, when you do tell yourself that you now have the time to build that door, then you tell yourself, well, can't do it because I'm really not in the right zone.
Well, we could get onto keys.
Let's go into keys. That's because that's a subject I'd love to go into.
Because a lot of people will tell you what the key to whatever is something. So the key to success is waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, running 20 miles, having a fruit smoothie and journaling for 10 minutes. That's the key to success. I jest, but that's the kind of stuff you read on social media. These are the 5 things top executives do every day to be successful. Believe them if you want. It's up to you.
Key point speaker, key this, key that.
Whatever. So they're the keys to success as you define them. But no one tells you, if you get this key, how do you open the door? You then need a door to open. So to me, I don't want a key to success, because if I haven't got any doors, I don't need a key. So it backs up that I've built all these doors and now I'm stuck because they're shut. Opportunities are not knocking because I haven't built enough of them. Perhaps I need more doors. And then you've got so many doors you can't move until you find the key. And then you've got to get a key to open all the doors. And it's just another level of barricade. Yeah. And what did I read on LinkedIn once last year? I think that somebody had got this, they'd been on this course and they'd learned the techniques they had to do. They had to get up at 5 o'clock. They had to journal for 20 minutes. They had to meditate for 30 minutes. Then they had to do this. And there was this routine between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 days a week, that they had to do to be successful, or whatever the goal of this course was. And they religiously stuck to this routine every day of the week. And they were so proud of themselves that they were doing this thing day in, day out. I'm not sure they stopped to think, am I actually progressing? Am I getting better? Am I happier? Or I don't know, but they did this.
Or how about, am I enjoying the moment while I'm doing this?
She posted one day on LinkedIn and said, oh, I've had a terrible morning. My dog was sick. I had to take him to the vet. I went on, she says, and the problem is I didn't journal for 20 minutes. I only did 10 minutes. Will it be all right? Or have I failed? And she thought the whole course program she was working on has now collapsed because she'd missed 10 minutes of journaling because her dog had to go to the vet. And that's how fixated that they'd created all these barriers around them, that they had to do this at 5 o'clock to 10 past. They had to then have their fruit smoothie. Then they had to journal. Then they had to meditate, because this was the program the person running the class had said they had to do to be successful or grow their business or whatever the hook to sell the course was. And people were saying, your dog had to go to the vet. Your dog probably takes priority over journaling for 10 minutes. This is life, but they were like seriously freaking out that day that they weren't sure whether they could carry on with the course because they missed 10 minutes of journaling. And you just, how many doors have you built and which zones are you stuck in? And clearly the course isn't working, but they couldn't see that because they're just running through the motions. They're doing tick, 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 tick. Oh, I've done that today. Right. I'll be successful tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, tick, 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 tick. I'll be successful tomorrow. And as I jested on a tweet a couple of days ago last week, I said, if I consistently procrastinate, will I be successful tomorrow?
Oh, that's very interesting.
It was tongue in cheek.
But that's good tongue in cheek.
And it sort of sums it up. I want to be consistently inconsistent. I want to have spontaneity. I want to try completely different things. I want to turn left when everybody's turning right. If everybody turns right, what happens to everything that's left? What happens to all these things that are left?
Yeah.
That no one's looking at, that no one's exploring.
Yes.
We're all kind of aiming for this. You've got to stand out from the crowd. Sorry, I moved on to crowds. I'm not sure crowds was in the list of things we were talking about, but stick with it.
No, but the crowd could be in there. This is.
We all want to stand out. Everyone wants to stand out for the crowd. And there's 2 issues with me. One, the first thing you need to do if you want to stand out from a crowd is find a crowd. Because if there's no crowd, you can't stand out from it. The second thing is, if we all stand out from the crowd, where's the crowd?
Right.
So it's another illusionary concept we have that there is no sort of crowd. Where is this crowd just standing out from anyway? And I'm like, well, why have you all joined social media to all be in the latest gang if you want to be away from it? Because if you're on LinkedIn trying to sell stuff, you want to be in the crowd to sell stuff to them. You want to be out away from the crowd. And it's all this illusionary kind of crowd building strategies that people churn out all this stuff to create nothing.
To create nothing. It's as you're speaking, I just had this little like a little light bulb that went off in my head.
It's the train of thoughts I work on.
Yeah, the train of thoughts. And I have to tell you, with all that you're saying, it seems to me that when you go out of that illusory, feeling or way of life or being, where you are able to let go of the barriers that time brings, and zones and doors and keys, then I would say that you really succeed in defying the odds.
Mhm. Well, this is suddenly you find this freedom that you're not trapped by all of these illusory objects. That
And isn't that
kind of
defying the odds? Because,
you either
the odds are this is going to happen. The odds are
yeah
that's going to happen. Or
yeah
the odds are this because that's just the way life is. Well,
yeah
no,
yeah
it's
yeah
not. If
yeah
there are no doors, that's why I always say that whole thing about the glass, right?
Mm.
Is the water half, glass half full, half empty, or there is no glass.
yeah
It's interesting though when you talked about the keys, because I was named locksmith to the heart.
yeah
But I still do like that for one reason. People are actually putting that that barrier on their heart.
yeah yeah
And one of the things that I do in helping people kind of unlock that is really, when you think about smithing, when you
yeah
if anyone's listening, that if you really Google or you learn, you look at what smithing really is, when it's really melting down those metals. And
yeah
you're a digital
yeah yeah
alchemist. It's
yeah
melting down those metals, and that's basically what I do as a coach, and in my writing, is just kind of melting down all those lumps and bumps and doorways and
yeah
zones and all of
yeah
that,
yeah
and
yeah
then just like, okay, this is freedom. This
Mm.
is, this
But
is
that's the journey you get to realize when you get there, you didn't need the key in the first place,
exactly,
because you don't need to unlock doors that don't exist.
exactly.
That's the point. It's going beyond all the time, but people are so stuck they can't go beyond. Yeah,
Yes. It's why you and I love that word beyond.
yeah,
You love that when
yeah,
I put that was like my tagline, right? You can
yeah,
go beyond. You're like, I like beyond.
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, good. Trevor likes beyond. So I'm okay.
Well, it sort of it defines a space that doesn't actually have any boundary or any place. There's a difference between a place and a space. A place is a specific place. New York is a place. You can go to New York. I can get on a flight and a train and a bus or whatever. And I can go to New York physically. I can be there.
Mhm.
But a space is nowhere or anywhere. Yeah. And that's the difference to it. And beyond, to me, is taking to a different space, which is freedom to explore, rather than a place like climbing a ladder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Climbing a ladder has some framework of, well, you can only go one step at a time up and that's it.
Exactly. Hence that
Higher
saying,
up,
the ladder of success.
yeah.
I mean,
And the higher up you get, the more chance it's a long way down to fall.
yeah.
Yeah. Whereas you
Yes.
go swimming in an ocean, you can explore wherever you want to explore. And if you want to just chill out and float a bit, you can, you know.
You're making me now rethink something in as it relates to, that my work as a domestic violence expert. I'm always, alluding to, there's the word, alluding to the concept of someone who is in that quote unquote victim mentality of just, look, make a really good, effective, safe exit plan. Now I'm rethinking using that word exit.
Yeah.
Because I've got to really consider this now, because to me, exit would be leaving that situation, right? But now exit is, from what I'm hearing you say, is another barrier, as if there's something stopping you. Now, in a life situation, sure, someone really may be barricaded in a situation, a home, whatever, within that life situation. However, if you know that it's just a situation, and this is very much what I teach. This is why I don't, this is why, like, I don't even let people use the word victim around me. And if I'm speaking on someone's network or doing something, like, I don't even I don't call myself a survivor. I'm a human.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have to use vocabulary, yes, but we don't want to even put labels that are either putting barriers in front of us, or also you used the word before, now I can't remember, but it's like a boundary, so you're putting a boundary on yourself. So I'm trying to rethink now in a situation where you would tell someone, well, it's hard to tell someone that the physical doors are not there, or but the life situation that's different, because you can say that, well, this isn't your life. This is a situation. This isn't your life. And I say that all the time. It's not your life. Eckhart Tolle says the same thing. It's not your life, right? It's a life situation. And so that's how you go, quote unquote, our favorite word, beyond. You can go beyond it.
Precisely. Well, I think the word exit, like when you say exit there, not the physical kind of, see if you're physically trapped somewhere, it's different, but the mental side of things. The exit to me, and having an exit strategy, implies you're currently trapped where you are and you're having a battle to try and to get to somewhere else. That's what it kind of implies to me. And it's similar to somebody tweeted a few weeks ago, and there's loads of comments. This guy said, if you were in a room with no doors or windows, what's the first thing you would do? So you're in a room. No, what was it? That's right. It says there's no doors and windows. What was the first thing you were going to do? So obviously it's going to be pitch black. You can't see anything. Yeah.
Okay.
And people are saying, oh, well, I'd sit down and sleep. I'd try and bang a wall down. Endless comments, endless, went on and on and on. And I just said, how did I get in the room?
That's great.
Yeah. And it just cut through all of this rubbish, all the things people think they would want to do in a dark room they couldn't get out of. And they're already conditioned they can't get out. But I said, well, how did it get in? And the guy who'd posted after hundreds and hundreds of comments said, well, that's a very good question, actually, isn't it?
That may be your new calling, to write these riddles that people cannot figure out, Trevor.
Yeah. But it's the same as the exit thing, isn't it? You're conditioned to think you're stuck in something. Otherwise, why do you need to exit?
Yeah, that's why. I guess that's why I use the word exit. Because for me, it's like unconditioning. I also use the word in my website, and just when I speak, I'm like, the problem isn't connecting. The problem is that we need to unplug from the conditions of, like, that, all the conditioning from birth till whatever age you're at. You have to unplug from all of the things and the global belief systems. Unplug from all of that. To me, that's none of that is true and absolute. And all of that is conditioning and learning. And there lies the stress, and there lies the worry, and there lies the feelings of also that maybe you're not successful, and that's so not true.
Precisely. I mean, I think the question is, instead of exiting, would you rather change or grow?
I think that from the standpoint, or should I say the perspective, of someone who needs to change their life situation that has been victimized, their mind, their thinking, their brain is not thinking of growing and expanding. They're from their perspective, it's more about like getting out and running or something. So that's why I use the exit. So, that's, you know what I mean? Like once you exit, sure, then there's your expansion.
No, I often ask people, would you, not in that specific situation, but generally ask people, would you rather grow or change?
Oh, yeah.
And some people say, well, it's the same thing, isn't it? I said, well, no. If I look out my window, there's a big oak tree in the field. That oak tree grows. It's quite big now. It's grown quite a lot over the last 100 years. It hasn't changed. It's still an oak tree. It hasn't changed into a daffodil. It hasn't changed into a tulip. It's an oak tree. It's been an oak tree for 100 years. It hasn't changed, but it's grown.
Yes.
And that's the difference between change and growth.
Yeah. And then to add to that, if you don't grow, you basically die. And if you're
Yeah.
dead, does that change? Yeah, because that oak tree that maybe is dead, eventually the roots decay. It starts to get dark and brown and crispy, and right. So there's another way of looking at it as far as yeah.
So no, I think that exit, the word exit probably is something you can play with that, and perhaps, and it changes on different situations, doesn't it?
Yes.
The going beyond is, well, how far have you got to? If you're in the world where you're still building doors and zones, you're not ready to go beyond. You've got to work through your zones and your doors.
Yes.
And you've got to experience them enough to realize that you don't need them.
Yeah.
You're just creating them for some reason that you think you've got to create them. Whether in work, everybody's zone building and they're all doing stuff where they're all getting outside their comfort zones, and it's the way of the world in that job you've got or your group of friends or whatever. But if you can start to even think the question of, well, why have I got this zone? Why did I create it? Did my friends create it? Did the society create it? Where's this zone come from? And you actually start to stop chasing the road, pull over, stop, and just take a moment. Think, where did this? Where is this zone? Where did it come from? Do I really need to go and do that to be successful, or to grow, or to whatever, or impress my friends, or what? Do I need to go into that discomfort zone that they think I need to go to? If I stay where I am, what's going to happen? I find I'm most creative when I'm in my comfort zone, because I'm relaxed in a comfortable area where I know I can thrive and grow and be really creative. If I'm being stressed, my brain isn't like, I want to be creative. No, you're in sort of survival mode. You're really stressed. You're uncomfortable. We're dealing with those problems. Forget being creative, and it's all the illusion that's created through. And I think it's society. I mean, the thoughts come back to society. If everybody's thinking you have to do X, and there's more and more thoughts about X, and I'm the only one thinking about why isn't going to take a strong thought in the world of thoughts that we all live in? X is going to dominate. And it's having that, I don't know, strength of character. I don't know what it is, but you've got to have that kind of bravery, perhaps, to think, no, I am going to think about why, because that's what I want to think about. And I'm not bothered about X, and see what happens with why.
I think bravery works. That definitely works for me. Bravery, courage, and also maybe that mixed with even vulnerability. Because if you can be vulnerable, you can also be brave and courageous, right? And you can also be kind of true and organic in the way you approach something, or like you said, maybe I want to talk about, or maybe I want to consider Y, and I don't want to consider Z. You just reminded me when about when you were talking about time and like why we need to do this or that. And I remember back when my child was young, growing up in school, I remember everything. Oh, you talk about racing everywhere. And one of the things that was always one of my I was always like, it was like a pet peeve, is racing the clock. I never liked racing the clock. It never made me feel good. And yet I'm always on time everywhere I go. So racing the clock does not make you on time. Just so that anyone that's listening, that is a lie. Racing the clock does not make you on time. Just leave earlier and take your time. Right. So, but my point is, so in school, there's always like, the kids, they have to race. They're finished. Boom, the bell rings. Everyone has to throw their things in their book bags. They have to go to their cubbies, get their book bags, put in their book bags, go back, get their hats, whatever, race for the bus. And so what have you. And one, there was a common thread going on where all of the kids at different days during the week would forget their assignment at home. They forgot some paper, they forgot a book, and one day a mom, and so all the moms are calling each other, and we're faxing over the homework instructions, and we're faxing over this and that. And it's ridiculous that you have to now be a mom. You have to have a fax, right? To be a mom right. So it becomes stupid. Right. And this is in like the early, 2000s. And I remember one time, so I was talking to the other mom, and I'll never forget this. And I still totally understand her because she's such a spiritual person. She said, "This is just crazy." She said, the bell rings, they have to rush, they have to do this, they have to get on the bus. But she goes, this is why, she says, this is why they're always forgetting things. And she goes, it's not that they forget. I said, no, I said, it's just, they're just racing. She said, I am just praying against the hands of time. And I never forgot that. I'm going to pray against the hands of time. And I totally knew what she meant, man. I was like, wow, she hit it right on the nose.
Yeah.
And that's how we're raising our children. That's how the schools are raising our children.
Yeah.
That's how
It
young
is.
adults are learning how to, get on the subway, get here, get there.
Yeah. I know. Well, I think we are changing from an analog to a digital system as life. And I think we're so plumbed into a digital world that we all have a digital device glued to our hand 24/7 that's prompting us. I mean, we strap things around our wrist that will keep pinging at you every few seconds. Hey, have you done this? Do this. Oh, here's an email. Here's this. Ding, bing, bing, bing. I haven't worn a watch for 20 years.
Me either.
No, precisely. So
and I really like my watch. I like what it looks like.
The concept of strapping some digital gadget around my wrist to give me updates every few seconds of what I should or shouldn't be doing minute by minute I just can't cope with the concept. But you go back in time, previously you would have analog time where you'd have a clock on a wall with hands that would go round and a little tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. It was mechanical, you'd wind it up. And it was great because I remember in one of our exams at school, we had a 3-hour exam at school, and I think it's design and technology exam, and we were working away. And I think it was quite. It's about 5 of us in the class doing our exam papers, and the teacher sat at the front. He says, "Oh, I've just got to nip to the toilet. I've just got to nip out for a couple of minutes. I'll be back. Carry on." Yeah, carried on. Anyway, when he went out, one of the guys in the class, he went up to the clock at the front of the room, and he turns the hands back on the clock an hour or half an hour or something. Sat back down, we carried on. Our 3-hour exam actually took 4 hours. And we managed to get finished because we wouldn't have finished in 3 hours. And the teacher had no clue.
He never had a clue.
No, because he sat there going, oh, yeah, we've still got another 2 hours. And he hadn't worked out the clock had moved back an hour.
That's interesting that he didn't.
And you could move time.
Realize it. He didn't even realize that's how long it was.
Yeah.
That's scary all in itself.
Because the further back you go in our human history of time was different. Whereas now we have, people have got their latest gadget wrapped around their wrist 24/7 that will tell them what their heartbeat is, how many steps they've done today, when their next meeting appointment is, how many emails they've got, how many likes they've got on Twitter. I mean, it's just controlling their life every minute of every day, and they're racing against it all the time. And I did a podcast a little while ago about how we're living with a digital heartbeat nowadays. No longer live with our own heartbeat, and it comes back to where do these thoughts come from, and wrapping something around your wrist so it keeps banging thoughts into your head of, have you done this, have you done that, you got on a meeting about, have you emailed them, you need to do 5 more steps, you're not going to be healthy, and how much water have you drunk today. On it, I'm sure I haven't got one to know all the things it does, but I'm pretty sure it can tell you everything about life you never wanted to know instantly. And that thing is creating thoughts in your mind to think, oh, I haven't run enough today. I haven't done enough steps. I'm 10 steps short. I better run more. It's just that's creating zones and doors and barriers all the time. Yeah. I haven't worn a watch for 20 years, and it gives you great freedom.
Yeah, I haven't either. I actually, it's been 20 years. It's so funny that you're mentioning that. And, I don't even wear, to be honest, I don't even wear like jewelry every day. Once in a while, I like to put a ring on, but if you go out somewhere special, fine. Okay. Makes you feel whatever. But I typically, I'm not someone that, what's the word? I don't, even if I look at my phone a lot for work, I never look at the time.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. It's really more like, okay, I'm on this app or that, or I don't look at it like it's like at it like it's a clock.
No.
And, I have been guilty of having my cell phone nearby. I'm not one that wears it. I don't have it strapped to my waist, but having it nearby, even in my hand. And I'm guilty of having it even in my hand and saying, what time is it? Which is, you know what though?
Yeah.
But I'm a peaceful person. Look, it keeps me peaceful.
Well, it's surprising when I first stopped wearing a watch, how many times I'd look at my wrist. The first 2 weeks of it, the first 2 weeks is like wrist. I keep staring at my wrist all day, and I go, what? And you don't realize how often. And this is 20 years ago when the internet really was only just barely existing, and we didn't have digital anything wrapped around your wrist. Whereas now it's just commonplace. Your life is controlled by your wrist, and all the pings and the notes, and that's what comes back to time. You're so controlled by this time to achieve whatever thing that your wrist is beeping at you to tell you you've got to achieve. I don't know how many steps I've done today. I mean, I can look at my phone and it says I've done 34 steps. The thing is, my phone hasn't been in my pocket. My phone's
that's the whole thing. Yeah.
And I sometimes I tweet and says, "Oh, I've only done 87 steps today. I think my phone is faulty." But it's been on my it's been on my desk all day while I'm running around. Does it matter?
Right. This is interesting what you say.
What's controlling your thoughts? What's creating all these illusions? And they manifest in doors or zones or whatever they manifest in. And does any of it actually exist?
So then how would someone be aware, make themselves or become aware that they are creating their own barricade to their path and progress? How would they be aware of that, and how would they be aware of seeing that, how they're seeing their time frames and how they're looking at, let's say, time and zones and doors and keys? How would they go about even beginning to become aware?
I think by just asking that question makes you start to think about them, because I'm sure a lot of people don't even think they have doors.
So real self-inquiry.
It's just kind of like, I don't know.
No, I mean, that's a great answer. Just ask yourself the question, so give us a scenario for, let's say, a viewer or a listener for each one, and how you can stop, maybe just kind of stop yourself and say, wait a second. It
is. Well, the ones you didn't mention were boxes. Like everybody said, I'm thinking outside the box. Well, just think,
Yes.
And it's just having that flip of just questioning thoughts, questioning why something may or may not be happening. And then I said, oh, well, one door shut. Why have you shut a door? Where did the door come from? Start questioning that door. If for example, I don't know, say you want to learn Spanish and you're looking for a class in your evenings or weekends. So I want to join a class to learn to speak Spanish. And you keep finding classes that are either fully booked, not in your location, too expensive. You've got to think, well, something's stopping me here. If you think they're doors that are stopping you, stop and think, well, hang on a second, who created these doors? Did I create them? Did the classes, where have they come from? And it's kind of, to me, don't use the doors as the excuse why you're not learning Spanish. Go beyond the doors and think, well, should I be learning Spanish? Why do you want to learn Spanish? What difference is it going to make? Are you going to move to Spain and live there? Was it just something because you were bored and thought, well, I've got something to do on a Tuesday night because I don't do anything? It's park the doors, get rid of the doors, and open up the thought processes to beyond the doors. And you might actually find there's an Italian class on a Thursday night, which is far more interesting. Got great people. They all go to an Italian restaurant afterwards and have a great meal out, and you find great friends. I don't know, but
yeah, that's a good example.
If you build all these doors going, oh, I couldn't learn Spanish because the class was cancelled, or you're using excuses to why you didn't do something, and you've created doors or zones or whatever implement you think you've created, whether you're a door, a box, a zone, a key, or whatever it is, you're creating all that. And then you're putting the hook of why you failed on a door. I didn't learn Spanish because this or that, or and you're blaming yourself for why you didn't learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, who knows? The Italian class may be 10 times more fun. You might find some great friends, have a trip to Italy, enjoy some nice Italian wine. Life's fine.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I'm not saying that's the art, but it's just,
no, that's good.
It's just, instead of racing ahead to like, there's my goal right over there, and I've got to go and learn Spanish, and that's all I'm ever going to look at until I learn Spanish. Broaden it, go left, go right, go up, go down, look at things, question. If it's not happening, you know, where did the doors that are closed come from? Who created them?
Yes. So
are they actually,
the first step is be aware.
Awareness. Yeah.
Awareness. Always awareness seems to always be that first step in everything in life, right?
Yeah.
Awareness.
Yeah.
And then the second suggestion or step, if we have to look at steps, would be here we go. But again, this is how we have to like actually, you know, teach or discuss. Vocabulary is important in the context of this world, right? And then there would be like ask yourself the question, inquire, and then inquire that question and go beyond that and go beyond that and beyond that. And to me, that self-inquiry, that is like an entire can of worms, if you will. That's really letting you really look at something so much further and beyond the scope of what it looked like between that hour and that hour, or what it looked like between where you're standing and where that door in your mind is, or what it looked like between where you are in the perception of this zone and the zone that in your perception you want to be. All of those things combined, it's ask yourself, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What does this really mean? And what is this like? What does it really mean to me? And you may discover that you don't really have that much meaning behind that. So it's not going to really matter. Yeah.
Yeah. A good quote on this subject. Banksy, you know, the artist Banksy?
I do not.
You've heard of him? Oh, he's a famous artist over here, young, sort of funky kind of art, street art, that kind of thing. A lot of people never use their initiative because no one told them to.
That's actually pretty profound.
So
because no one told them to.
Yeah. If you're too busy to think while you're thinking, slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of reminds me, when people are saying, when let's say mothers of young toddlers, they wonder like, well, why is her son speaking full sentences and mine's not? There must be something wrong with my son. Let me take him to the doctor and have him, like, you know, analyzed. What? Yeah. Like, it's so stupid. It's more like I remember many years ago, my son's 24 now, but I remember my son he was standing, he was walking, you know, like really confidently, like really well. And one of my girlfriends had 2 daughters and she was concerned, like, well, why isn't I said, I'm not going to say her name here, of course. I said, so what? It doesn't matter. Like, look, they all do it at their own timing. Yeah. It's fine. You're going to walk away one day and she's going to prop her hands up on the coffee table. She's going to stand up and she's going to be proud of herself. It's okay. Like, it's whose timing says who? Says who? The doctors? Says who? Your ego, because one person's child's doing something that yours is not, and vice versa. Says who? Says who? Statistics? Yeah. So we need to just kind of like take a breath.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the big things that we need to be aware of is that we're already lining ourselves up in one way or another. We're putting ourselves on this scale of one way or another and comparing that, you know, that benchmark to where we are now, and that benchmark that says we're not enough.
Yeah.
And I want to be very clear for listeners. We're not saying don't strive to go from like where you are now to where you want to be. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that you could do this in a very brainful and heart-filled and present and conscious way, and you can actually have that success or feel or understand or become more successful. I believe we all are born successful, but we can have that without sacrificing peace. Right?
Yeah. I think it's just breaking that conditioning. If you want to get from A to Z, you don't have to do B, C, D, E. You know, try M, try T.
Right.
Try
Like
U,
says who?
try N. Try some other alphabet. Try a Greek alphabet with other letters. You know, try number 7. I mean, you know, who
There's
says
options?
You have to go from A to Z? Who says you're at A to start with and Z's the end? You know.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's and look, I mean, there's that, you know, when people say, you know, create, don't destroy. But you have to actually, I understand that saying. I understand that as like a kind of an inspiring, positive thing to say. However, be very, very careful that when you're saying something like that, that there's so many creations already out there. I think you and I've had this discussion like even 8 years ago, because I believe that all the creations are already out there, just like the thoughts are out there, right? And we kind of choose the creations that we wish to experience. Right? One creative step after another, right? One conscious step after another, right? So the same thing when you say you know, when someone might say create, don't destroy, destroy what? And even create what? There's people that create mayhem, you know, because they're good at creating. We don't always have to create something that serves everyone, right? Of course, we want to create things that serve us and that serve others. Of course, absolutely. But we need to be really aware of what we're doing in every single moment, and make sure that we're not being controlled by your perception of time or someone else's perception of time as far as where you have to be, like as far in your life. And also the doors and also the zones. And are you in the zone? Are you not? Are you, you know, if you're not in your comfort zones, okay. If it doesn't feel good, okay, then get rid of the zone.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You know, you can do all of this stuff without zones and doors and boxes. You don't have to have them at all. You know, you can have the freedom just to explore your life without all these control mechanisms. But it's probably a bit like when you're a child and you go and ride a bike. You got to stabilize the wheels because you don't want to fall off. And there are control mechanisms to make sure you don't fall off. And if doors and zones and boxes are there to help us kind of compartmentalize our journey, fine. I don't know where they come from and I don't know how you build them. And I know if I say to you, what color is your box, nobody knows.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we create or build at the barricades is we do it from some kind of reference point from when we were younger, or, you know, something that we experienced something bad or good with, something that brought us pain or pleasure. And so now we could reference that to, you know, okay, it was a red box that happened when I was behind in that red box. So every time something similar happens, and you think, and you're going to connect that to like a red box. So you're going to probably avoid that red box, right? But if there was no box, if we just said it was an experience, and we can use that experience to leverage us into a harmonious outcome, I think that's where we have a really, really peaceful and also understanding and more driven journey, because that drive is really going to harmony, no matter where the end of that, wherever that journey is headed.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
You and I talked many, many years ago about positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
And it always really it resonates with me now. It really rang bells and whistles then.
Yeah.
And that was the literal fact, not literal that you could touch it and feel it, but the scientific explanation where positive and negative, where you need both, right? In energy, right?
Yeah.
Is there's a positive and a negative, just like if anyone wants to think about, let's say, a battery, right? And positive and negative. We all understand one side's positive, one side's negative. So you need both, right? To have that energy.
Yeah.
And you and I had this discussion in that it's okay if there's something that there's going to be negative and positive in different scenarios and situations. And that's what it's all about. It's a matter of, can you kind of start to move that needle or move something a little bit more positive while maybe the negative.
It's even beyond that, you see, because there's a big assumption that positive is good and negative is bad.
Exactly. But that's what I was going to say, is that can't you just springboard off of the negative and use the energy of the negativity, use the energy of what's negative to really help you?
There's the thing, like if you go to a hospital and have a test for some medical condition and you get a positive result, that's normally not good. But people think positive is good, and no, not positive isn't always good. And positive and negative is a sine wave of energy, wave, the frequency that goes on, and it's all kind of, the energy hasn't got those attributes to decide that's good or that's bad. It's just energy. We interpret positive is good, negative is bad, even though it always isn't that case. That's as we've decided. And the way I see it, having gone past that kind of negative positive kind of wave thing, what we should be tapping into is the frequency and the amplitude. So the frequency is it a fine close wave, or is it a broad spread out wave? And amplitude is how big it is, like volume. Imagine music, you've got volume control, loud and quiet. That's your amplitude, and your frequency is bass to treble. That's a simplified language way of explaining how it comes across. But everybody's hung up on, it's positive. You've got to be positive energy. You've got to have positive this, positive that. Do you want a positive test result for some major ailment? No, you don't. So Don't get hung up on positive is good.
Yes.
It may be not. Yeah. I had a positive breath test by the police, stopped me. I've now been in prison 3 years for drink driving. That ain't good.
Exactly. No, it's true. It's so true. And also a situation that you might perceive to be negative could also be so life-changing. I mean, what you're saying is 1000% spot on. I don't know if you remember my book, in the very, very first pages of my book, I talked about when I almost drowned and died. And I think it was in the preface, I don't recall, but it was in the very beginning of my book, Truth to Triumph. And I talked about how I was drowning.
Yeah.
And I was literally drowning. And I said, okay, I've got two things I can do. I can, start, and I was, the water was coming crawl over me, and I was swallowing a lot of water. And of course, my heart was pounding and I was nervous. I said, I got two things. I can either, figure out how I'm going to use the power of these waves, which one would say was negative, and it was at the time. It was a negative situation, right?
Yeah.
And very forceful and stronger than I physically.
Yeah.
Or I could just give up and die.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, innate kicked in, and I had innately just went with the thrust of the waves, keeping my head above water, just in a floating position.
Yeah.
And those waves eventually took me back to shore.
Yeah.
About like a beach beyond. but until it washed me, it basically washed me to shore.
Yeah.
And do you know, I got there calmly, Trevor, and I was alive. And once I realized that I was alive, and once I was so grateful that I listened to what innately, my those survival whatever kicked in.
Yeah.
I was laying there. The only thing I could think of, and the sun was shining on my eyes, the only thing I could think of was, oh goodness, like, is my bathing suit all intact? Because I felt like I was in like a war, like in like a war of waves.
Yeah.
And when I was relieved and grateful, I thought, oh no, because there were a crowd of people around me, and I thought, oh dear Lord, I hope I'm inside my bathing suit right now. But that would be an example of also how we use those forces, if you will, that we feel are stronger right now in a situation. The same thing with positive and negative. How about you got a bad test on for whatever, like some kind of testing for a particular position or a job. Well, maybe that job maybe that's not really supposed to be the job. Maybe that's not really what you're truly manifesting. Maybe that negative test score really works in your favor.
I think that's the thing. It's getting back to questioning what you're thinking and why you're thinking what you're thinking. Don't just assume thoughts are yours.
One of the things that I've been really honed in on is, what's your focus? What do you believe about that focus? Like, what are your focus and beliefs? And what is the meaning, the real meaning that it has for you? What's the real meaning behind it? And then put language onto that, so that you're speaking that not just aloud, like you and I speaking, but that mental internal dialogue. What's going on inside in the mental internal dialogue? When Rosie was very ill, and we talked about this 2 years ago. Okay, so the people are saying this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, or the diagnosis is telling you this, and the prognosis is telling you that. But what was the mental dialogue going on in your mind, in your brain, and in Rosie's was quite the opposite. And that focus and meaning and language that you had and she had on her health was far trumped anything that any prognosis could ever put on her.
That's all it's all about, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
all the thoughts. It's all the thoughts, and understanding where they come from, where they originate from, and which ones are the ones you should be thinking about. And don't just assume they're all for you. Otherwise you'll drown in thoughts, basically.
I remember you putting it that way, like a soup of, I think you said
soup of thoughts. We all swim in a soup of thoughts.
I love that. I always remember sayings that people saying, that's one of them. That's like a Trevor Lorkings. We all swim in a soup of thoughts. But make sure that you don't drown in a soup of thoughts. Make sure that you're being very selective. It's like, remember that soup, the ABC, like noodle soup, like the ABC soups, where there were like little letters in there, and now we're dating ourselves. And
to me, it's a bit like air. Thoughts like air. We breathe in air, we make use of it, and we let it go, and we do it all day, every day. We don't think about doing it, but we do it. But what we don't do is breathe in all of the air in the whole world all the time. We just take a little bit of a time. Keep taking a little bit of air. And thoughts are the same. You don't want to take in all the thoughts that are all out there. Take the ones that you kind of can make use of and do something with them. The ones you can't make use of, let go and send them back out. There's plenty of other people that can think about things that you haven't got time to. So, you'll never run out of thoughts.
This is an interesting sentence that you just said, the last two sentences. And if you don't have use for them, then throw them out. When it comes to the current events and life situations that are going on around the globe, clearly, most of us feel that society is not always going in the direction that we'd like to go. And when it comes to that, And of course, there's so many people, including myself. I mean, I'm a bit of if I were to label myself as a peacemaker, I'm fine with that. I do like to help people elicit peace in their own life.
Yeah.
Not just change, but I like to help people elicit change that brings peace to their life, right? And why not? If I feel I can help someone do that. However, isn't it entirely possible that too many of us, for too many minutes and hours in a day, or days in a week, or weeks in a month, or months in a year, that we put too much attention on all of the non-peaceful things that are going on, all of the criminal things and the violent things, and that's that's major media, and that's never going to stop. But what would you tell people as far as taking in, like taking in what you will, but not letting it rent space in your brain? Because I feel like that's what's bringing on a lot of stress and ultimately a lot of illness and disease.
Well, it's back, but it sounds quite glib and simple, isn't it? You choose your thoughts and choose what you want to think about. Just because there's a TV screen with pictures and sound on it, you don't have to think about it. It's up to you. If you want to think about it, think about it. But there's a lot of things you don't have to engage with those thoughts. You can have an awareness of things, and I'll say you just got to hide away in a hole and don't see the light of day. But it's that subtle decision of whether you go, okay, I can see that's happening. Maybe not, don't know. But there's a vision there on a TV screen that's showing me pictures of something going on. Fine. Leave it there. If there's nothing I can actually do about it and it's not going to actually affect me, great. Well, leave it to be there. And I'm going to think about other things. Not one of us is big enough to change the whole world and take on every issue in every corner of the world all the time. We physically cannot cope. We're not designed to cope with taking all that on. So you have to realize there's limits to what you can think about.
I totally agree.
So I'm not saying don't be aware of things, but it's just kind of, it's being conscious yourself to think about the things that will help you in your world, because unless you're functioning and working well, you're never going to help anybody else.
I totally agree.
If you were some emotional wreck, you wouldn't help people with the coaching you do.
Exactly.
Because you couldn't cope with it. So you've got to get yourself in a stable, peaceful situation in how you do that. And if you need to cut out thought and you need to distance yourself from thoughts that you don't want, then do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just
it
be
does start with your
selective.
state. Yeah. And when you said, if you need to get in a state of mind to help someone else, how about just your state, your physiology, just like you can't be like this nervous wreck that, sometimes we look at people and they look as if, like, if I look at someone, I almost can see the inside of their brain, like vibrating.
Yeah.
In with such speed and seeing so much static in between the ears.
Yeah.
That is not a place that any of us want to be. We want to eliminate the static. We get so used to that static that it becomes like the norm. Yeah. And I think that the idea is we want to kind of be free of that static, just like we want to be free of those barricades.
Yeah.
The zones, the doors, the keys, the times. What else? The boxes. Right?
The crowds.
Boxes.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the things that was big in corporate was something that I talked about in do you remember when you designed my ebook? And you did such a beautiful job, by the way, because you're such a digital alchemist. But I remember talking about, like, what ceiling of opportunity? What, again, there's another barricade. Like, there's no ceiling of opportunity.
Yeah.
You're not hitting a ceiling. Again, it's the vocabulary. The vocabulary, I feel, puts us in this conditioned mindset or brain set. It just kind of is like,
it's more brain set than mindset, definitely. But that's the other podcast, isn't it? But
yes.
there's all these physical barriers, whether you want a ceiling, a box, they keep popping up. Curves as well, because we want to get ahead of the curve.
Yes.
I know where the curve is. I don't know who built it, but anyway,
yeah,
we want to be ahead of the curve. So if ever you stumble across a curve, make sure you're ahead of it, and you'll be fine. But there are all these barriers that come across, and the more
why don't you just be the curve?
Yeah, but build the curve. But they all get ingrained in that society, don't they?
Yes.
And the more people accept that ceiling, the more it exists.
Yes.
And the harder it is to get through it when it didn't exist in the first place. And it's just, choose your thoughts wisely, I think, is the sum up of the story.
So let me ask you a question to add on to those other 2 or 3 things. So become aware.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself the question, why? Right? Choose those thoughts wisely. And here's the question, how might someone not wind up back into what they're used to, that pattern of building another door, living in a zone, or seeing any kind of barricade? How can they condition themselves to uncondition themselves? There's a question.
It comes back to that bravery to be able to just break the door down, isn't it? It's kind of like, once we got the awareness of these doors exist, I can't do that because that door's stopping me. You got to get rid of the door, break it down, smash it, find the key to open it, but don't open it and shut it. Just get rid of it. And it's being that bravery to think, well, what happens if that door isn't there? What would happen? And it's taking that step to think, right, I want to get rid of that door. I don't need a door, and see what happens.
I love it.
You work through that, and the more you realize, a simple thing, take your watch off. How brave are you to take your watch off, kind of thing? When I say to people I haven't worn a watch for 20 years, they think I'm completely balmy. They think, well, how do you survive without a watch? Well, 20 years ago, I stopped wearing a watch, and I am still here today. I've managed to get through every day. Somehow I've managed to do it, and I've achieved it, and I'm a walking example of someone who doesn't wear a watch. So if you've got some gadget wrapped around your wrist that's pinging at you and telling you you've got a meeting in 3 minutes, or you've got 50 emails to answer, whatever it tells you, leave it off for a day and see what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Right.
Leave it on your desk instead. Take that little step, just undo the little catch and just put it on your desk instead of your wrist. Because when you nip to the bathroom to go to the toilet, you don't need a ping to say, oh, you've got to do this. Just stop and see. Just take that one little thing and see what happens.
I have an example
if the world keeps on turning.
The world keeps on turning, and guess
life
what?
Is good.
Life still is good. In fact, it can be better. Quick story. Several weeks ago, you might have seen me. I might have put something on social media. I don't remember, but I switched carriers on my phone, and the original carrier would not unlock my phone. So I had no phone. I had no phone. And so I don't have a landline. So I thought, well, so what? Who really calls me anyway? And okay, so I can't get a text. I can't put out a text. And is it really the end of the world?
Yeah.
I didn't have a phone. Initially, I was like, well, this is crazy. But I realized it wasn't that I didn't have a phone. It was that I felt controlled by the carrier.
Yeah.
By locking something that I owned. And that's a whole nother subject. Again, they created this barrier that under the circumstances I had no control over. So now what am I going to do about that?
Yeah.
Am I going to fold? No. In fact, I didn't have a phone for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I didn't have a phone for 6 days. Do you know what?
Life was good.
Life was fine. It was good. And it was freeing. And it was also, you speak about bravery. I felt brave without the phone. I'm like, it's okay. I don't need a phone. Eventually I do,
Yeah.
but what's the worst that could happen? Because how spoiled are we on this earth? Most of us in many, many countries. I did have to reach out to one of my clients on one of the days I had no phone. She was late and I was online waiting for her. And so I said, well, I can't text her. And she's probably texting me. I can't receive a text.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to just email her off my laptop because I work off my laptop anyway. So I shot her an email. She got my email.
Yeah.
She goes, oh yeah, I'm just having like a technical issue. I'm trying to get on. There you go. Did I need the phone?
No.
Yeah. So
yeah, just try it.
Try it. This is great. I'm so happy that you came to really just tease out why we create and how we create our own barricades, to our path and our progress. And through creating these barricades of our perceptions of time and zones and doors and keys and everything else that puts us in and boxes and ceilings and everything else, right? Doors and windows. And I am just excited to discuss this because it gives us a sense of freedom of self. It also gives us a sense of, hey, you're successful right where you are right now in this moment. And can you become more of what you are right now? Yes. But let it happen in flow. Let it happen as things are supposed to unfold, as things, so that you're doing this in a harmonious way for your ultimate harmonious outcome, right?
Yeah. I love the way you put that. It's good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. And what are you working on right now? Are you writing a book?
I have a title, but I haven't got around to writing it yet because the flow isn't right.
Exactly.
When the time is right, it will flow. But it's got thoughts chewing around, and just sort of odd little notes here and there, and when the time is right, it will all come together.
That's fantastic.
Life is busy with day-to-day business at the moment, just as it is. It's the cycle of that happening. So we go with that flow because that's going nicely, and we put other things on the back burner and let them simmer away, and they'll come around as and when they need to.
That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Trevor Lorkings, for being here today. And if anyone would like to get in touch with Trevor Lorkings, where would you like them to head to? Any of your social medias or?
You can find my social media, but if you go to digitalalchemist.live, my website, all my contact and socials are listed on there as well. So that's probably the easiest place to start.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. It's always an honor. And you are just my pal and my buddy from across the pond, and wishing you well and talk soon.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Lily.
Thank you.